afternoon, everyone. This is John Rust on Rust on the Radio, broadcasting on Freedom 95, 950 AM and 95.9 FM on your radio dial. Folks, we have an ultra special show today. I'm calling it the review of the Indiana State GOP 2026 convention. Here in the studio, we have Ethan Hatcher, John Schmitz, and the Redneck Republican. Justin, welcome all of you.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having us in the studio, my friend.
Yeah, hopefully we'll come out of here without fighting each other. But let's go.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
Got a stacked cast for this.
So,
show.
folks, background on all this. The convention, a lot of delegates went up there, and we're going to talk right into this very quickly with a plan, I think, to elect David Shelton. I think he was going in, I think, the favorite with if you really did the math on how people would have voted. But some stuff changed at the convention, and I'm going to let John Schmitz start out on that because you have some interesting comments on that, I believe.
Yeah, and this was basically the I don't even know if we have terms like grassroots anymore, or establishment, because it's, we have the Old Testament establishment. Now we have a New Testament establishment. And basically establishment is those that are in power. I mean,
I would say the machine. I was thinking about that too. I think it's the machine Republicans, not the establishment Republicans. What do you think of that, Ethan? What do you think of that term?
I think they're one and the same, essentially, because the establishment is that operates the machine, the political machine, which, seeks to eternally anoint and ensconce those who are within its own control and grasp.
Exactly. And I think that's the part I didn't grasp when I got involved heavily into politics when I ran for the Senate a couple of years ago, was how much the machine controls Indiana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, let me step back on that, because this is something that when I heard what was going on and you were trying to get on the ballot as a Republican, and the machine is doing its machine things. And I thought, wow, the way they painted this John Rush guy, he is like the most evil person I know. and so I'm like, I'm the guy that if I hear somebody running against me, well, I'll call him. And I'll say, hey, what's up? Let's get, And so I get a hold of John, and I'm thinking, man, this guy's crazy. I got to be prepared for this. And I sit down with them, and I'm like, this guy's not crazy.
He's just a nice chicken farmer.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, and I would say possibly eccentric. I mean, that's okay.
If you run for public office, that has to be added.
Well, I mean,
you got to be at least a little crazy to dip your toe in the muck with those people.
I was impressed with the fact that you're rescuing organs that are going to go to the dumpster, and I don't think that, and you have the means to
pipe organs, folks, not human organs.
Yeah, really, yeah. I mean, I went down there as kidneys.
This was a perfectly good kidney, and I just found it in the trash.
Yeah, really. But I just found that their mode of operatus is discourage and destroy.
Because they only want people from within. And that's what I got was, how dare you run against Jim Banks? It was an open race. It was open. There was no incumbent. Braun was the senator. He bowed out of that to run for governor. And that's the only reason I dreamed of, it was an open seat. I'm like, well, I'll throw my hat in the ring and see what happens. And they're like, no, you can't do that. You're just
not allowed, not in good standing.
You're one of the 81% of Hoosiers we ban from running for political office. You don't meet our, requirements, that you're under our thumb.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
I mean, you can't convince me that there is a compelling interest for the government to preclude 81% of the state from participating in its own representation. That's ridiculous. And yet, this issue was brought up before the Indiana Supreme Court, and they declined to pursue it further.
And I took it all the way to the United States Supreme Court. Unfortunately, they refused to hear the case. But, someday we're going to try that again. Well, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep, speaking the truth and shaming the devil, because there are a lot of devils in the Indiana Republican machine.
I say it's soulless. I mean, it's like a corporation doesn't have a soul. These people don't have a soul. They don't care who they use, who they abuse, who they throw out, who they run over.
Speaking of run over, and that's exactly what happened to David Shelton.
Yeah,
they just ran over him with a bus.
This was such a PTSD moment for me, because I ran for chairman twice in Marion County, and the same exact thing happened. You know, the establishment or the machine or whatever, they appointed 300 delegates to outweigh our elected delegates. It was just the same thing over and over. The person up there that was supposed to be speaking about how they were doing in their office gave a stump speech for my competitor, and Jim Banks got up there and did a stump speech for his guy. It just was the same thing. You know what? And it works because they appointed enough to get him over the finish line. Now, granted, Max only won by 11 votes over the majority. That's not like, hey, let's go, our guy. We're all behind our guy. No, that is like, hey, we barely appointed enough people to get this done.
Well, folks, and this is why I specifically invited Ethan Hatcher in for the show today. He was an elected delegate. That means
That's
the people of Indiana voted for him to represent them at the Indiana Republican GOP convention. He was not chosen by a GOP chair. He was not, there automatically. He was there because the people voted for him to be there.
Well, let's be perfectly transparent. I did not actually appear on the ballot because I was one of 6 positions and only 6 people ran. So technically I won 100% of the vote because nobody had to vote for me. Everybody who applied automatically filled the job in my district.
But you were voted for, though.
Correct. I essentially voted for myself because I put a candidate form in.
The problem is there were so many delegates that no one voted for at all that were appointed.
Correct.
And what I want to get into, folks, on here, I'm going to let Ethan continue with this story because it's fascinating.
Well, and you hit on an important point here, because this system is exactly how folks like Max Establishment Engling and Dirty Diego Moralist, despite the fact that they both lost their respective delegate races, they were appointed to be delegates. So they got to participate in the convention even though they lost at the election. But you had folks like myself and multiple folks like myself that I've just seen on social media who were elected to their position, who did file, run, and pay their fees, but were appointed through taken out through the back door by their county chairs.
Right. So, folks, Abraham Lincoln has a quote, and it says, "Elections belong to the people. It's their choice." Unfortunately, Abraham Lincoln would be slapped so hard today if he saw what's going on. I mean, he would just be disgusted with how the Indiana Republican Party has subverted the will of the people. Folks, you just heard Ethan say that. He was elected. The people that lost their election were appointed later after they lost their election. Both Max and Diego lost their races for delegate to the convention. But guess what? They showed up at the convention and could vote for themselves.
Yes.
Well,
Ethan was voted for, and John was voted for. John Schmitz was voted for delegate as well, and he won, and he was at the convention. And so we do have one delegate that was voted for that was at the convention that was able to vote, but only one.
But you knew to pay your fee on time.
I know. I've been through this rodeo. They do not. They want you to not pay your fee.
They've taken John out to the woodshed a few times in the past, so he knew the shellacking that these insiders are going to try and give. Well, under any circumstance. So yeah, don't give him an excuse. He paid the fee. I didn't pay it within the 7-day window.
Let's step back even further about these appointments. So Max was appointed by a county chair that didn't win his election either. So Mario Mazzoloni lost terribly, and they're boasting about the youngest delegate was appointed by his dad.
Yeah, Mazzoloni.
Yeah, and I just listened to him on another show, and the smoke screen he was putting up was unbelievable about how we all came together. I'll tell you what, a third of those people walked out of that convention after Max got up there that were Shelton supporters that felt like we were not listened to. And on top of that, so you were in Joseph Bortka's district, and he was the gentleman that brought up the district convention resolution that got all the way through the committees, but then not even voted on to get on there. And he's the one that disrupted the convention with the point of order for about 10 minutes. And unfortunately, people don't understand that he is really trying to do good for the party. And those folks don't feel like they're being listened to either, because they were asking for is just to be brought to a vote. Just bring one thing up on the floor as the party did business with the whole convention, bring this up as a vote. Didn't mean it was going to pass. They wouldn't even bring it up for a vote because they are scared to death that it would pass and they would lose their control. So if you're a grassroots guy, we'll just use that as, or a gal, we'll use that as an example. You felt like, why even show up? Why would I even show up to this thing? Because we got the Jim Banks party over here that's just done
The machine.
a tremendous job marketing. You know, I say, don't hate the player, hate the game. And they played the game, I would say, 95% to the max.
Sure. Nobody should be surprised, speaking of Max, that Max Establishment England walked away to victory in the second ballot because, you know, like, look, it's easy to win when you get to appoint your own delegates, the people who will be voting for you. And that's exactly what the machine did here.
Well, you know,
So, Ethan, when you showed up at the convention, explain the process on how is it just walking into the convention center and saying, here's my ID, I presume?
Correct. I mean, essentially, you walk up the way they had it. There was, a room of the convention center, and they had different check-in stations for the various counties in Indiana. And so you would walk along the line and find your county, and then they opened up the register, and they would try and find your name in the list, and presumably you would sign in because it looked like there was a signature comparison, a verification element to this whole thing. So I walk up to the counter and they ask me, what county are you for? Oh, I'm in Marion County. I was elected. And they can't find my name in the register. And I think, oh no. Oh my God, it's happening. This is a problem. And sure enough, they go, walk in the back, and he calls Natalie Goodwin and is like, well, yeah, I just called your county chair. Your county chair says that you were replaced. Oh my God.
And
like,
you did?
why? I paid the delegate fee. Well, you didn't pay it on time. Well, why would you be able to pay the fee if there was such a short window? They didn't say anything about it on the website. There's not this disclaimer, make sure to have your fee within 7 days.
It was all about throwing you off, even
Sure.
after you were democratically elected.
Sure. And other representatives, other delegates, they got communication from their county chair. They got little helpful reminders like, hey, yeah, congratulations, you won. Here's the fee.
Because
Here's the link
they
in
knew
the portal.
who they would be voting for.
Hey,
They were friends.
Ethan, this would surprise you, but I didn't get that little note either. I heard other
You're
people saying,
kidding.
well, I got an email saying that.
I didn't.
I tell you, when you hate, we don't have tinfoil hats down here. We're not up at my studio, but, a lot of this stuff you think, man, this is very well orchestrated.
We're running out of time for this segment. When we come back, we're going to get back into this GOP convention procedure. And one of the things I want to talk about is how they delayed the vote, I think, to get delegates to leave who they knew would vote for Shelton. This is John Rust on the Radio. We will be right back. Welcome back, folks. This is John Rust on the Radio on Freedom 95, broadcasting all across the beautiful fruited plain of Indiana. God bless Rush Limbaugh. Folks, I am in the studio with John Schmitz from the Mouthwash Talk Show. Welcome, John.
Hey, welcome.
Ethan Hatcher from WIBC, of all places. Welcome, Ethan.
Saturday night on the Circle.
Saturday
Thanks
night-
for having me here.
Saturday night on the Circle. And what time does that air?
7 to 9 every Saturday night.
Very good. And the Redneck Republican, Justin. Welcome, Justin.
Always happy to be on the show.
So, folks, we're talking about the procedures at the convention. One thing I want to talk about in this segment was how I believe the vote tabulation was drawn out to discourage people from staying so that the machine candidate would be a guaranteed winner.
It was very ironic that David Shelton's theme was based on a championship wrestler. Ric Flair was Rick Niemeyer from up north did a Ric Flair imitation and ripped his shirt off like Hulk Hogan, a Shelton shirt off. And, to me, the whole thing was orchestrated like a championship wrestling match. All of these details that the machine or the establishment had already worked out. My problem with how long it took wasn't that it wasn't accurate or that there was some cheating or there was some other things involved. My problem was the length of time. It took almost 2.5, 3 hours for the first time. And Lana Kiesling the day before went on WoWo and said, well, we're going to have these voting things done quickly in between, and it's going to be a really good process. Ironically, this is the Secretary of State office that's supposed to have a nice, smooth election, and they can't manage 1,600 votes. So I was like, okay, this is our own party. We should be able to trust each other. I should be able to trust anybody in our party to be able to vote, even on your phone, or raise your hand, or write it on a piece of paper. But why do we not trust our own party enough that we can't count the votes?
Well,
So,
I think it was a purposeful delay. Ethan, do you want to comment on that?
Well, my point and counterpoint to all this is like, sure, there was a delay. It could have been executed a lot more smoothly. I think we're all on the same page there. On the other hand, what happened to Crazy Jamie's delegates? Because I think they abandoned ship. I was surprised. I thought a lot of them would cross over and vote for David Shelton. Now, I'm sure for whatever reason they were committed for Jamie Rittenauer, but after she went down in the first ballot, you'd figure that the opposition vote or the protest vote would then shift to David Shelton, because they certainly weren't going to go for Diego Morales, and then she also wouldn't utter the name of Max Establishment Engling, so the natural conclusion is that those people are going to shift their support for David Shelton. What else do they have to do? On a Saturday afternoon? Seriously, though, like, you're elected to be delegate. Okay, it takes a couple extra hours. It could be more efficient, but where else are you going for the day?
Exactly,
Well,
and I think
that part is one real quick thing. I think part of that that's one of the reasons they had it in Fort Wayne, was to get people in the southern part of the state, especially David Shelton's strong point, to say, well, I got to get back, because I got church tomorrow or whatever. And so they drug out the counts as long as they could, knowing it would hurt Shelton.
Is God really going to be that upset if you skip a day at church?
but so a couple things on that. Where the convention was, Lana's from Fort Wayne. I think she wanted to bring it to her house. I think, you could say that was part of the strategy, but I think she wanted to bring it to her own hometown. The other thing is,
I think Banks was involved in that too.
well, he's from there too. Yeah.
Right.
So that part of it was all sort of orchestrated, for sure. But the fact that how this thing was played out, you talked about in between how long it takes. They want to take time so they can go whip these votes.
Sure.
They knew exactly where, like I said, they had me. Andrew Ireland came up to me and said, well, we had you down as a second round guy. They knew exactly where everybody was. So I think this is what I think. Now we got to get the tinfoil hat out. Conspiracy on Mario Masolani. He was out for Diego Morales. Now, I think that this is like whipping up votes out in the Congress. You want to give them cover for if they run again, or if they're out there in their community. So I think in his community, he had to support Diego on the first round to save face, because, that's sort of how.
Why would you support Dirty Diego Morales?
Well,
man?
because,
Do you just love scandal, controversy, and corruption?
And honestly, I don't even know but that's what he said. I was so surprised with how fast he pivoted after Jamie went out, how fast he pivoted to Max. It is almost like either they called him and said, hey, Mario, you want to keep county chair, you better vote for Max. I mean, I'm sure there was some pressure on there, or it was voluntary, but I'm sure there was something goofy going on there with him, because half of those delegates that were for Diego went for Max, and the other half went for Shelton, and Jamie's went home. So that was the difference maker. So now, I mean, think about it. I think it's very smart on Mario's part.
See, if people like me were on the convention floor, I would have whipped those Jamie Rittenauer delegates, and they would have stayed. We would have voted for David Shelton.
And that's why you're not at the convention.
Yeah.
Exactly. And in my view, you're elected to be a delegate. It's your duty to stay there the entire length of the convention. I don't think you have a right to leave when the people elected you to do that.
Do we have to lock the doors?
Honestly, I think we should.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it's one day. I mean, how hard is it to stay in one day at a convention to vote for a
Well,
party
being a
nominee?
delegate-
You start locking legislators in buildings. It's giving me French Revolution flashbacks.
I also have one question. I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, but am I correct? Wasn't there about like 200 or so delegates that didn't even show up?
it was
it was a little over 100, wasn't it?
yeah, about 100. And
But then the real question is, how many people did they replace? Do we have solid numbers on that?
well, I've done a little research on that, and and you're not going to get any numbers from the party, because but I'm in a unique position to check this out, because I was there at the thing, and I had to go by memory of who didn't win their election, and it was unbelievable. In Marion County, I would say the establishment or the machine people, they were handed their walking papers. Natalie Goodwin didn't even show up. She was appointed, probably in your place, to go up to this thing and did not show up. And the establishment people, there was 3 township chairs that did not win their election. Mm-hmm. They got, well, one of them didn't, but the other 2 were up there. It was just amazing how many faces I saw with Max Engling shirts on that were not elected, that were appointed. And I get it. If you're a county chair and you see people that run, you think, oh, that's probably somebody put in there. But don't be so naive to think that these folks were, oh, shucks, we're just going to put you in. You can vote who you want to vote for. No. If you're that naive, I can see why you fell for hook, line, and sinker for the Max Engling, marketing program.
And I'm 100% convinced that if they wanted to tap me in, they totally could have tapped me in.
Oh, yeah.
If I was a Marine and my last name was Young, they would have bent the rules just like when he
You don't even need signatures to get on the Senate thing if you're young.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You can be a few signatures short. It's okay. But, I paid my delegate fee. I was elected. I showed up to the convention. And then Natalie Goodwin, the county chair, she was appointed, probably replacing me, taking my seat. And then I show up. She didn't. I ran into Andrew Ireland on the floor there in the checkout process, and he got into contact with her.
Andrew's a good dude.
Yeah, Andrew's a solid dude. Even though he knew that I wasn't going to be a Max Engling voter, he got in contact with her, and she just told me to go pound sand. Didn't even bother to show up. You couldn't. You can't convince me that they wouldn't be able to swap me out.
Yeah.
She's the county chair.
Have you gotten your money back yet for that?
No.
Oh, yeah. That's actually, thanks for the donation. Have a nice day.
Much like an ex-girlfriend who's trying to close contact, like I called back the number from the Republican Party that called me on election day to let me know that I had the delegate fee, and it just went to some Google number account. Yeah. I left a message, but they haven't called me back, so I have to figure out some other way to contact the party. They never gave me any contact information. They're like, oh yeah, we'll give you back your money. Nah, they're just telling you to pound
good luck
sand.
with that.
The signature thing, we can segue into the, Greg Ballard was actually in the lobby up there. Now, the little
brilliant troll move.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's good. But we were talking earlier before the show about I showed up at the Democrat convention. I had a way to get in there, and I took advantage of it, and I got dragged through the mud. But everybody else said, "Oh, Greg Ballard, he's so brave going in the." And he didn't even get into the convention. I got into the Democrat convention, and I actually have all of the Democrats' information for every delegate. And
well, I would say that would be the difference there, John, because he was just in the hotel. You can be in the hotel lobby.
But I'm saying
nobody's keeping you from being in the hotel lobby.
Yeah, well,
that's a troll. If you're actually in the convention,
I was definitely
totally different.
Well, I call it a spy. I don't think trolling was the right thing. Although I did troll when I trolled Andre Carson. That's when he sent Mila Eldridge over to kick me out. He couldn't even do it himself. But the thing is, it's like I would look at it as like if I was the Colts playing the evil New England Patriots, if I could get in their huddle and hear every play they have, I'd be like, really, I'd know what was going on. And I got to listen to all these speeches. I got to watch
Richard Nixon had a similar idea.
Well, but mine was legal. I had credentials that were legal. I wasn't recording anything.
At least you wasn't sneaking in during the night,
No, I went right through the front door and looked at there. So somebody could say, well, that was really a bold. And my whole campaign strategy was I go where Republicans don't go. I mean, and I used that strategy, and I got 4,600 more votes than Braun and 2,500 more than Trump. And you'd think somebody would say, hey, John, how did you do that? How did you do that in Marion County? It was a bright blue thing. How did you get that many people with the limited funds you had and the limited reach you had? How did you get that done? But no, I get demonized. I get called all this, by my own party. That was the problem.
Because you're not under their thumb. That's purely 100%.
I'm a little bit of a rebel.
Yep.
And Ethan, you're a rebel too.
We share that quality. I'm a little bit of a rebel too.
Yeah.
But that's what Indiana needs. We have to have people that fight for liberty. I spoke at the Defenders of Liberty this past week up in Avon. And, when you see the grassroots folks, it is nothing like the machine. The grassroots absolutely loves what we stand for, what we should stand for. Unfortunately, the machine, different story. They talk about property taxes. Oh, we'll reform them or whatever. It's all hogwash. They only care about being in power, not about principle.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
100%.
It is, and it's sad because they just care about winning. I heard so many people say, well, Max is our best chance of winning. Well, and then they try to trump up
Well,
his
Diego
experience.
won, and the problem is, look how he performed in office. Look at all the corruption, and the Republicans are now refusing to call out that corruption to get an investigation to get to the bottom of why he had to be replaced in the first place. Folks, we're out of time for this segment. When we come back, we're going to dig right into all this corruption that was really the reason Diego was booted, because he would lose. But guess what, folks? They're not going to do anything about that. They don't want to know. This is John Rust on Rust on the Radio. Stay tuned. We will be right back. Welcome back, folks. This is John Rust on Rust on the Radio. The John Rust Show, broadcasting on Freedom 95, 950 AM and 95.9 FM on your radio dial. Broadcasting all across the beautiful fruited plain of Indiana. So, folks, I'm in the studio here with John Schmitz, Ethan Hatcher, and the Redneck Republican Justin. And we're talking about the GOP convention, but it's really not just in Indiana where the machine has taken over and we have lost our conservative train of thought, I think, in the party. You know, look at, I'm an economic conservative first and foremost, and it greatly bothers me how, Indiana is trying to enact tolls for I-70. That's just the start. I believe they will be tolling every mile of Indiana interstates once they get the chance.
Oh, absolutely. That was the proposal. It would, in fact, make Indiana the first state in the nation to have every mile of their interstate tolled. Not even, famously tolled states like Pennsylvania with, the turnpike and the turnpikes on the East Coast. Not even those states have 100% of their interstate infrastructure toll roads, which Indiana would become. And you want to talk about a lack of fiscal conservatism. Furthermore, they're proposing to give, $2 billion, north of $1 billion to an already multi-billion dollar franchise in the Bears.
From tolls. From tolls.
From tolls and from property taxes,
Right.
from everything else,
And, we've lost the plot on what a Republican should be in the state of Indiana. I like to say the Republican Party is the tax and spend Democrat Party of the 1970s. The Democrat Party's lunatics.
Well, we've lost the plot nationally, too, when you have the President of the United States who is actively campaigning against one of the only Republicans in the form of Thomas Massey, who's actually standing for the principles of fiscal conservatism and limited government that used to energize these conversations in the Tea Party era of 2008. And, silly me for being an idealistic teenager who actually believed that Republicans actually wanted to uphold the Constitution and support those values. It was all lies.
It's all about winning. It's all about winning at
now.
all costs. Well, what I find interesting in this toll conversation is, we used to own the toll road up on 80, up on the north side, up on the north of Indiana, and Mitch Daniels sold it. So this is
for a short-term monetary gain to balance the budget.
And it's the same with
and that was awful. That's like selling your silverware to pay for a McDonald's value meal. That's what was going on. Taking the family
it's like
silver.
selling your birthright for a bowl of soup.
That's a good one.
That's
Your
what they
Bible
were.
Where'd that
reference.
metaphor come from?
Yeah, that was you sold your whole thing. That was a good Bible reference there.
Yeah, from the atheist.
But and Ballard did the very same thing with selling the parking meters. And I'll just do a quick story here about that. When I was trying to run for mayor, I wanted to find out about these parking meters, so I put in a FOIA for the contract of how they sold these things. So they said, well, it's so big, if you wouldn't mind, come down to the 24th floor and we'll give it to you and you can sit there and read it. So I'm sitting there reading it, and in comes Brian Bosma. And I said, hey, Brian, how's it going? What are you doing here? He says, I'm coming down here to meet with the Department of Public Works. I said, well, are you going to give them some more money? They complain they don't have enough money. I said, I've given them so much dang money that they just don't know what to do with it. And he went in and had a meeting. And I read that contract, and it's basically the city gets a third of the revenue. At the time was about $6 million. Well, Denison Park Indy has grown that to about $20 million. So it is like, okay, we're the government. We don't know how to run it, but we'll sell that off. And that Ballard sold it off for, not that much money. And I think the city could actually buy it back every 10 years for like $19 million. But it's a big, long contract. But to me, it's like, okay, we're going to do all these toll roads. Are they going to sell those to a private entity who's going to take a cut? And then the government
yes,
doesn't get
there
it.
will be a collection. The money will go to whoever collects the money, and then they will take their cut and then give it back to the state of Indiana. But then, folks, the problem is that money is not going to be going for the third lane on I-70. I think that's hogwash.
No.
That money will be going to the IEDC. That money will be going to political donors of the machine, pure and simple.
Well, I thought the lottery was supposed to pay for that. What happened to all that? We get like $300 million a year.
Everything should just be, we should be just happiness and joy.
We can gamble our
with
way
all
out
the
of this, I'm sure.
gambling money.
That's all good. Well, maybe we could
audit NDOT, audit DPW.
Yeah. Oh, please. Well, we got a hairdresser running DPW now, so
Ethan, you just said the key point, audit, and that's the issue I have on circling back to Diego. Is there will be no accountability on all these corruption charges that have been leveled against him.
Not if Max Establishment England is allowed to win.
Max said he was calling for a special investigator. Rob Kendall broke that story, and where Max actually said that he was calling for a special investigator. But then the people around him said, oh, no, he didn't say that. So what really happened?
Well, he's also explicitly said that he wouldn't engage in a cooperative effort with Marion County prosecutor Ryan, friend of the miscreant Mears, because of partisan differences. Well, we wouldn't want to empower a Democrat to impeach Republicans, so that's why he instead favored this independent investigator, which is full of bull pucky. He's not gonna empower this investigator to meaningfully look into the misdeeds of Dirty Diego Morales.
Well, and what concerns me on this is Daniel Elliott was on the Rob Kendall show earlier this week, and he specifically said we have to take our time on investigating this. This could be a long, drawn-out process. And Rob's reaction to that was, it will never happen. They're saying, well, this won't, this will never
Like the
happen
Epstein
before the
investigation.
election. Exactly. It's
just
the
delay
exact
it until
same
people
thing.
Forget about it.
Exactly.
In the crushing weight of the relentless 24-hour news cycle, you'll forget about it after.
And my fear, I'm a Republican. My fear is the Democrats are just going to use this to pound Max relentlessly through the fall election, and they will ride that to victory because they are so big-headed that they can do all these corrupt acts and never be held accountable.
Don't discount the effect of Lori for Liberty, the Libertarian candidate for Secretary of State, and then also the dark horse candidate, the third-party challenger,
it's like
the Lincoln Party candidate, Greg Ballard, former Republican mayor of Indianapolis, and in my opinion, the best Indianapolis mayor of the 21st century. When you compare him to, Hogsnott
or Goldsmith
or Peterson.
Yeah. Well, and so part of this.
The last Republican that could win in the city of Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Greg Ballard.
Yeah.
And he had his own missteps, the getting the bike lanes started, horrible mistake. And you can see the downstream effect of that to this day. The Blue Indy debacle, ridiculous,
Well, and, it was lightning in a bottle, and he's trying to catch that. But, if he gets the Lincoln Party gets 10%, they're a major party. If they get 2%, they're a minor party. They'll have the ballot access. So I think this is basically a Trojan horse for him to try this Secretary of State thing. But he wants to drag enough votes out there to be able to get his percentages. And it's going to be interesting because I think there's a lot of people, we're going to have some Democrat delegates on the Mouthwash show next Tuesday, or this Tuesday now.
You bringing on Baby Bye?
I don't know. I got Jesse Brown helping me out, so we'll see how that goes. But
he doesn't like Baby Bye.
I know. That's what I'm saying. They have very much the same dynamic that Shelton and Max have in theirs because they had Blythe Potter, who's from down here in Franklin, I believe, against the Baby Bye, and they have the same rift, and it might even be worse. It's 60-40. They thought Bye was going to run over her like a steamroller, but 60-40 is not a run over.
There's thresholds in the Ballard candidacy, folks. There's a 2% threshold and a 10% threshold.
Yep.
So, John, do you want to explain specifically what I'm talking about there?
So to be a major party in Indiana, you have to have 10% of the Secretary of State vote. To be a minor party, such as the Libertarians, now if they were to get 10% at some point, maybe this is their time. They could be considered a major party.
And what's the distinction then? Then they get primary ballot access if they have the 10%?
They get primary ballot access. They can have a convention. Right now the Libertarians have to finance their own convention, pick their own people, and go that route. It's a big deal. So and there's a lot of people that have had it. I think people underestimate how many independent voters there are in Indiana. There's a lot of people that have just thrown their hands up and left these parties. And to get back to our convention, I saw so many people, 600 and some delegates voted for David Shelton. That's a third or more of what was there that really went out grumbling of my voice wasn't heard. And I know that I've talked to some people like, I'm done with them. And that's what they want to do.
And I think that was the majority of the people that actually won an election to go to the convention.
Yeah, these were.
That's what upsets me about the result is we had a machine candidate win, not a candidate who was actually voted for by the people of Indiana, who were voted on.
He just appeared out of nowhere. The day before the filing deadline, bloop, here comes Max Establishment England, and up to that point, both Fraud Rakita, the current Attorney General, and then also Jim Banks had endorsed Dirty Diego. They jumped ship. And to his credit, Dirty Diego continued to send mailers with both Jim Banks and Fraud Rakita's endorsement. Wasn't that hilarious? You're getting the endorsements, and it's not like they could sue. Like at one point, they did endorse him. These are direct quotes, nothing unfactual on it. If you want to send your own counter literature, like, no, I rescinded the endorsement. Well, go ahead and mail it,
yeah,
buddy.
It's like putting cooked spaghetti back in the box. It's like you're not going to get that done.
Well, I'll tell you what got me about the whole thing is people on Twitter is trying to say, oh, yeah, Max England, he's the grassroots candidate. Dog, he no one knew who he was until the filing deadline, and then all of a sudden the junior senator and the attorney general just endorse him out of nowhere, and he's just kind of
now he's the new Reagan.
He's kind of anointed the new figure. That is not grassroots. That is establishment. Literally the definition.
Machine at work.
And
exactly.
And he lost when he ran for Congress against Victoria Sparks. He was number 3 on that, and he lost his delegate
Speaking
race.
of that, this is one thing that I would tell people all the time about Diego, and then when Max came in. If their own neighbors didn't trust them enough to even just be a representative for them at the state convention, how in the heck am I supposed to trust these people to actually be the Secretary of State? It just makes no sense.
Well, I'm convinced that the machine could get a ham sandwich elected. I mean, you hear that you can indict a ham sandwich, but I think
that's what we have in Indiana, a bunch of ham sandwiches. We don't have anyone who will actually fight for Hooters. Folks, we are out of time for this segment. We will be right back. This is John Rust on the Radio. Welcome back, folks. This is John Rust on the Radio on Freedom 95, broadcasting at 950 AM and 95.9 FM on your radio dial, broadcasting all across the beautiful fruited plain of Indiana. Folks, I'm in the studio with the Redneck Republican, Justin. Welcome, Justin. Ethan Hatcher, Saturday Night on the Circle, WIBC.
Thanks for having me on the show, my friend.
And John Schmitz. Welcome, John.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Mouthwash Talk Show. Do you want to explain how you can get to that show? It's on.
Oh, yeah. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Live chat on every Tuesday at 9 p.m. We've had some pretty good shows going on, and next week we're going to have Democrat convention people, and then after that we have Catherine Callahan, who's fighting the establishment up in Madison County on the week after that. So we're just they're fighting a good fight. Tune in.
Very good.
And you can tune in to me 7 to 9 p.m. on 93.1 WIBC every Saturday night, and you can find my podcast at SaturdayNightOnTheCircle.fireside.fm. That's my personal podcasting page. Follow me at Ethan Hatcher, ETHNHATCHER on the Twitter machine. And if you want to support the show, you can find my commemorative Saturday Night on the Circle coin. Show off your membership to Oof Nation. Purchase the coin today at HammerandNigelStore.com. Again, that's HammerandNigelStore.com.
Fantastic.
And I don't have as much of an established show as these two gentlemen do, but if you want to follow more of me, I'm on Twitter at the GOP Redneck. I post on there. Sometimes I post videos, and Like I said, not nearly as established as John Schmitz or Ethan Hatcher, but
You're
You find
growing.
the titling to be somewhat redundant. GOP redneck, isn't that kind of like a hat on a hat?
maybe.
Speaking as somebody who loves hats, right?
But Justin's Twitter, I follow his Twitter account. It is taking off, and he is out there fighting every day with the machine.
I ruffled their
Wonderful.
feathers. I tell you what,
Yeah.
especially the kind of
We
the
need more of that.
especially the TPUSA young Republican crowd. They're not too big fans. I mean, especially this past month during the
Well,
convention.
we were talking about that between the break, folks, how this TPUSA has been hijacked. You know, it used to be a conservative organization. Now it's just this military organization to support candidates that I think, they're paying someone.
Well, I mean, it's crazy how quick they ditched the legacy of their founder, and they're running around like chickens with their heads cut off, which you would know something about, being a humble chicken farmer, and saying, well, we don't know how Charlie would feel about the Iran war. And it's like, well, fortunately, we don't have to guess, because he spoke about this on multiple occasions at length and in great detail on a recorded podcast in a recorded setting. What are you talking about? Or when they Toilet Paper USA came out against Thomas Massey and endorsed the opposition. What was his name? Gallarain. And again, Kirk was effusive of his praise for Thomas Massey. Said that was his favorite congressman, and they just don't give a damn about his legacy. And I was not a big Charlie Kirk fan in life, but he was certainly a unique force, and he was very clear about his views. And it just seems
And he
like
was he was very, very clear about his.
The organization has abandoned it.
Well, he was very, very clear always about his admiration for Thomas Massey.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Massey is one of the few people who have stood up in Washington to fight for conservative principles, to fight for liberty, all the way through without ever bending the knee to the establishment. That's why they had to take him out. He was embarrassing, the establishment so deeply. But I think we have not heard the last from Thomas Massey. I hear rumbles of a presidential run. I hear rumbles of, running for governor. We have not heard the last from Thomas Massey, which is a good thing because he's a fighter.
I agree.
Yeah, I think we the people are starting to really. And when I first got into politics, which as age 56, I just was a good old cog in the wheel out there making my money, paying my taxes. One of the very first meetings I had, a guy says people don't vote until they get mad. And it's so I was like, oh really? But I've noticed that it's until you get mad. You're gonna
and
vote.
people are getting so mad in Indiana, folks, about what our energy prices are doing. And you know who one of the sponsors was of the Indiana GOP convention?
IURC.
Exactly. And Clean Grid Association. It's this organization, this pack of solar farms and windmills who are seeking to take over our energy grid for all this really unreliable energy. I'm sorry, nuclear and coal is where it's at, in my opinion.
Yeah, nuclear. Here. Nuclear is the only sensible solution for a stable, growing energy future in the 21st century, and it is the greenest form of energy that we currently have available. So anytime you hear these green energy advocates and they're talking about, wind and solar alternatives, but they don't discuss nuclear energy, those people aren't serious.
Well, and folks, the proof's always in the pudding, and that's why people are mad. We pay now 17.8 cents per kilowatt for electricity in Indiana. Folks, Kentucky, which still burns a lot of coal, is only 12 cents per kilowatt. So
Wow.
Despite all of our Energy Star appliances, all of our LED light bulbs, Hoosier's electric rates are going up and up because of these very expensive forms of electricity, solar farms and windmills being forced on us.
You got to remember, Kentucky at least partially powers their state through moonshine, though.
Well, that's that. We call that ethanol. One of the things that I think that these go hand in hand with data centers and these solar
Exactly,
farms.
and that's why data centers are driving our electric rates through the roof.
Well, and they're not popular. I mean, this is one of these things where, how you hit something on the way up. I think these folks that were this renewable energy thing, they're hitting it on the way down. And folks are like seeing behind the curtain on these things because they're taking valuable farmland. And then these things have a shelf life. What happens if a tornado comes through? There's just, where we throw them away when they don't work?
My thing on the data centers, have you seen the movie movie War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise,
I didn't see the new one.
Yeah,
I saw the
yeah.
original.
where these aliens come in and they are inject pods into the Earth's crust through electric bolts. And these pods come back out and wipe out all humans. That's what these data centers, in a way, are doing. You know, this artificial intelligence is going to be coming after our jobs.
But remember the end of that movie. We're going to defeat the data centers with the COVID virus.
Well, I
how
like
this
Mars
works.
Attacks, where the heads explode when they play Slim Whitman. Maybe we could play Slim Whitman on these people and they'll quit.
But, folks, this is where the Indiana Republican Party has lost the plot. You know, they are giving all these economic incentives to the data centers. That would be no different than offering economic incentives to these alien pods coming down from, you know, the outer space to destroy us. What on earth is going on with that?
Well, I'll tell a crazy story about a data center down in the south part of Indiana in Jefferson County. There's an old Army base there, the Jefferson Proving Grounds, and it will end up, if it's built, it will be the second largest data center in the world. Is going to be
In the world.
they want to put there. Well, the crazy part about it is that spot sits just south of what's called the Big Oaks National Wildlife Refuge. It's like a 50,000 some acre wildlife refuge where people can hunt and fish. It's public access. Well, people was like, well, how are you going to put a data center right next to this refuge? It's going to be like the borders are like right there. All of a sudden, a couple weeks ago, guess what? It looks like Big Oaks might lose all its federal funding and it might not be public access no more. Imagine that. So we're going to trade in a wildlife refuge for a data center.
Well, these data centers, it's a land rush. You know, it's like in the 1800s when you saw the farmers rushing across the plains to stake out their claim on ownership. That's what these data centers are doing in Indiana right now today, folks. They are taking our farmland, they're taking our water, they're taking our electricity, because it is a land rush to get ownership of the future, literally. Mm-hmm. You know, these tech trillionaires, and they are trillionaires now, are coming in and saying, you're going to have to buy your own rights from us. You're going to have to lease your liberty from us. They will be our new overlords, these tech overlords.
They're paving over paradise and putting up a data center.
You say data, I say data. You say potato, I say patata.
But the story behind it, though, folks, is what you know, everyone asks, well, what are they doing? You know, and some people say, well, it's AI videos, you know, to have your dog, you know, walking around doing something funny or something. No, it is to collect all your information so you can be watched. You know, it's to use these flock cameras to track you. It is all a web of ownership of all of this data by these new overlords who will then be able to say, well, you did this on that date, you better pay us this.
Yeah.
It is all about control.
Yeah.
You know, folks, we're getting close to July 4th. That's what the American Revolution was about. We had an American Revolution over a 3-cent tax on a pound of tea. 3 cents.
Yeah, I didn't like tea. We're to this point now where there is an us against them. And it's unfortunate that we aren't we. And I say all these things are great theories till you add people. You think about the common denominator and how this stuff gets screwed up. It's the people that get involved. And they, you know, it's like anything. They figure out a way to get around how to get campaign cash out of these operations, out of this IEDC. They'll get their campaign cash out. It's just
well, and
happen.
that's what, you know, the machine, you know, they worked against elected delegates up in Fort Wayne, but it's the same all across the state on opposition to data centers. The people are showing up and saying, hell no, we do not want these data centers. But the politicians are saying, you're going to get them anyhow. Yeah. And then they go out and make fun of the people opposed to the data centers. That is just wrong.
You're talking about that mayor who, what do you say about the people who oppose the data centers?
You live in crappy houses,
That's
I'm
right.
using a polite term. We can't say that other term on the radio, folks.
I thought it was little pink houses. What happened to those days? We all lived in little pink houses.
Little pink houses for you and me.
Yep.
So, folks, we're running out of time. Hopefully, our little pink houses will be preserved in the future. But I want to close this program with my father's favorite Bible verse, Psalm 118, verse 24. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. I want to once again thank you, John Schmitz, for coming in.
Thank you.
Ethan Hatcher, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And the Redneck Republican, Justin, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.
So, folks, I will see you all again next week. This is John Rust signing off.